By the end of this video, you'll get a list of difficult but important questions to ask to your team and how to ask them as a Scrum Master to guarantee an effective daily Scrum. First up, as per the Scrum Guide 2020, the purpose of the daily Scrum is to inspect progress towards the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary, adjusting the upcoming planned work. 2 goals here, and everything you do in this Scrum event, the daily Scrum, should be with the intention of completing these 2 goals. The first goal of a daily Scrum is to inspect progress towards the sprint goal. A sprint goal is basically an explanation of what the team believes they can achieve during this sprint. If the team did the sprint planning session correctly, achieving all the items in the sprint backlog should result in the team achieving the sprint goal. With this in mind, in the daily Scrum, the team should craft together. Everyone in the team should craft together a plan for the day on how can we get closer, answering the question, how can we get closer to the sprint goal? The second purpose of a daily Scrum is to adapt the sprint backlog as necessary. If the team, the product owner, feel like a user story, a defect, a bug, the priority of any task needs to be reviewed, it's a good place to do it with the whole team during the daily Scrum. Now that we have a context, let's jump into the actual difficult questions, but important questions that you can ask as a Scrum Master, an Agile coach, or anyone in the team to guarantee an effective daily Scrum. Number 1, ask the team questions around the purpose of a daily Scrum. We already talked about this. We just talked about this. There's 2 goals of a daily Scrum, and everything you do in this session should be with the intention of achieving these 2 goals. So you can simply ask the team, how are we? Do we feel like we successfully inspected the progress towards the sprint goal? Do we feel that? Is the sprint goal clear? Do we have a plan for the day as a team to get us closer to the sprint goal? Does the sprint backlog need to be updated? Maybe there's a change in priorities. Number 2, you can ask the team the classic 3 questions. What did you do yesterday? What will you do today? Are there any impediments in your way? Most daily Scrums around the world are run with these 3 questions in mind. Really classic questions which were introduced in the first version of the Scrum Guide and then removed in the latest version, the Scrum Guide 2020. While effective, the 3 questions were overly prescriptive and limiting. There's many ways to run a daily Scrum. And the goal, remember the goal, the purpose of a daily Scrum is to inspect progress towards the sprint goal and update the sprint backlog if necessary. Many ways to do that, and the 3 questions are only a single way to do that, which I personally don't like. I don't like it. I've used the 3 questions for many years, and I've seen many times in many teams with many people from different backgrounds, but using the 3 questions might give the impression that the daily Scrum is being run like a status meeting. Ask the team. If you're using the 3 questions, ask the team, do you feel that the daily Scrum is being run like a status meeting? You might be surprised by the answers that you get. It feels like we want to manage people instead of managing work and get closer to the sprint goal. If you still want to use the 3 questions, I recommend that you rephrase these 3 questions. Simple rephrasing. Instead of saying, what did you do yesterday? Rephrase it to, what did I do yesterday to get closer to a sprint goal? What will I do today to get closer to a sprint goal? Are there any impediments in my way today which prevent me from getting closer to the sprint goal? You see, simple rephrasing, but it moves the focus back to the sprint goal. The ultimate reason why we're doing the daily Scrum, get closer to the sprint goal. Number 3, learning is extremely important in your personal and work life, but also very, very underrated. Management, upper management, middle management, they don't like when people learn stuff. They want to focus on delivery, focus on getting things fast to the market. That's the only reason why we are doing Agile. Get things fast to the market. That's not the main reason why we are doing Agile. We want to produce something that the customer wants to use. And learning is exactly how to do that. We put something to the market, or even us, we try something, we get feedback, and then we try something else, which should be better because we got the feedback. We learned from the feedback. And the daily scrum is a good place to do some learning. You can ask the team, has anyone learned something that they would like to share? Does anyone need some clarifications with regards to a feature, a user story? What do we still need to learn in this sprint to get us closer to the sprint goal? Some very good questions, and I'm sure that you'll get some good insights from the team. Number 4, progress. It's very important that we talk about progress in the daily scrum. The purpose of a sprint is to achieve the sprint goal, a sprint goal that the team committed on. The team believed that they could achieve the sprint goal in the sprint, and we need to track that. So you can ask simple questions like, are we on track with regards to the sprint goal? Do we feel that we will be able to achieve the sprint goal by the end of a sprint? Does anyone in the team need help to complete a feature? Are we currently working on the most important items? Can we work together as a team to complete all the work currently in work in progress prior to taking on new stuff? Number 5, give space to other work. Sometimes the product owner, business analyst, designer, or anyone else who is part of a team will join the daily scrum but feel left out. They feel left out because the purpose of a daily scrum is to get closer to a sprint goal. And they're not really part of a sprint goal because we are doing some prep work for the next sprint. The designer is preparing designs for the next sprint. The product owner is working on user stories, which will be tackled in the next sprint. So we are working during the day. We aren't doing anything. We are actually working, but doing preparation for the next sprint. And in the daily scrum, we might feel left out because we are focusing on the sprint goal for this sprint. So at the end of a sprint, you can ask questions like, anyone else would like to share something? Do we have other things that we want to talk about in this session? Number 6 is more of a tip instead of a question to ask. We all agree that listening is important, but I feel that in the daily scrum, people are more focused on thinking what they will say next in their update when it's their turn to speak instead of listening to others. And a good way to tackle this issue is, instead of having a pre-ordered list of who speaks next, what about telling the speaker, the current speaker, to pick the next speaker? And it goes on and on until everyone has spoken in the daily scrum. And you can also make it a bit more fun if the current speaker has picked someone to speak next who has already spoken. The current speaker maybe loses a point, and if someone loses 2 points in the daily scrum, the person needs to tell a joke at the end of a daily scrum. Make it more fun, which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips on how to run effective daily scrums instead of using the 3 boring questions, watch the video that stands out the most on the screen right now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.